Thanks for joining me. I'm Dale Archdekin with Smart Inside Sales. For those of you who are watching us live, you get us all to yourselves. Welcome, welcome, because I can't get this pushed live on the Facebook, but we will upload it there later on for people to be able to view. So today I have the esteemed guest, Lee Adkins, who is the founder of Amplified Solutions and a contributor and a partner with Follow Up Boss. And for anyone who's been living under a rock and doesn't know who Follow Up Boss is, that is a fantastic award-winning, industry-leading CRM for the real estate industry. Both Lee and I collaborate a lot on that CRM and help a lot of people with that. So Lee, thank you so much for joining me today. And Lee's going to be we're going to be just really getting into it and talking about operational management, structure, things like that, the things that Lee's a real expert at.
Cool, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always great to hang with you and talk business. So you want me to give a little bit of quick background, I guess, for context, just so, I've done some of this stuff before.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I actually, the first 10 years of my career were in music as a professional musician, but then I also scaled a business through music. We won't get into details, but opened multiple locations. So my first big operational experience was like, hey, kid, go to this city and open up a new location, find the location, hire the staff,
Wow.
just make it so.
Yeah.
So I thought that was just normal. Like, don't people know how to do that? Everybody knows how to do that. Got into real estate in 2006 as just a solo agent. I like to say I've literally worn every hat. I've literally been a solo agent. I've been a team member. I've led a team, been a partner in a brokerage. I've done all those things. But ultimately in 2012, I was approached by a team, an existing team, and they would still tell you that they were a team only on paper. And they basically hired me to come in as their operations manager. So go from, two crazy people running around selling real estate to a real company. I was able to help them grow pretty quickly from $24 million team, which was 2 top producers running really hard, to pretty consistently a $65 to $70 million team with a new construction department and, like a company. So as part of doing that, very quickly, other people through some of these communities you and I are both involved in were like, wait, what do you do? Like, you help people figure out their systems and who to hire and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, well, we should talk. So
yeah, that's excellent, man. Great. Thank you for that intro. And so, I have some bullet points over here that we're going to be talking about today, and I think we'll just really go down them, right?
Cool.
And, based on your experience, and one of the reasons that I want to do this is because a lot of our clients need some of this operational help. They oftentimes, my side specializes in the sales, scripting, dialogue, all that stuff. But a lot of times they need help with who to hire, how to hire. And, operations people are oftentimes very different from salespeople. Right. So first question then is when, in your experience working with real estate teams, brokerages, when should they hire operational help?
Yeah, I mean, here's the bad news nobody wants to hear. You always want to hire it before you need it, which is hard because you either don't have the money yet because you're not ramped up enough. You can almost never do it too early. But I think, the key signs are definitely, things that you're not getting to, or, I've got more. I mean, the classic kind of example is that I've got more business than I can get to. Mm-hmm. To me, I think it's really important to take an honest self-assessment about all this stuff, because if you're just really busy with all this stuff and you're just disorganized, then maybe you don't need another person, or maybe you do need another person. But, focusing in on, am I capable of mentoring another agent? Because if you are, bring on another agent and get that revenue going. If you're not, start to think operations, assistant, marketing, VA, some other non-sales person that can give that person some attention, get them into your systems or get them to create your systems before you scale. So, honestly, I think just taking a deeper self-assessment, something like a Strengthsfinder or even a DISC is a great place to start.
For the team owner or team leader.
Right, for yourself,
okay.
To say, hey, like, what am I really, and the great thing about Strengthsfinder is not only does it give you your 5 strengths, I believe it still gives you your 5 weaknesses, your 5 least strengths.
Is that a website? I'm not familiar with that one.
So Strengthsfinder is essentially an assessment type of like an online assessment. It's now owned by Gallup actually, but if you just look up Strengthsfinder, if you Google Strengthsfinder, it'll come up. It's an online, you know, kind of like a disc, but it gives you a little more actionable, like, hey, here's the 5 things that you should really lean into doing more of.
Okay, great. So use Strengthsfinder. That's excellent. So obviously you mentioned an administrative assistant. I think pretty much most individual agents and small teams understand what an admin is, right? Do the paperwork, check the boxes, et cetera, right? File the papers, you know, send the emails. When we talk operations beyond your administrative assistant, what other roles are there as we scale teams, as we grow? What else are we hiring for?
Yeah, I think that this is really the hardest part for people because it could be a marketing person. But I think again, I don't want to be too broken record about this, but going back to your strengths, like if marketing is not, there are people that get in this business that are marketing geniuses that also happen to sell real estate. And they should make all the local community videos and do all the beautiful marketing that they can do. I think the problem people make overall with this hire or any hire is that they're typically hiring people they like or people that come from someone that likes them or whatnot, and they're hiring someone they like. The problem is I always say, we need a not you. We've got you, we need a not you. And I think part of the problem is that people will hire somebody because they're like, oh, they're great, I really like them, but they're probably not strong in your weaknesses. So, I mean, marketing, to answer your question, marketing clearly is one. Just the general tasks of running a business. Did you renew your LLC? You know, did you pay for your whatever needs to get paid for? Like, is the office bill getting paid? Or, you know, things like that, just more of the, what I would still consider operational, keeping the lights on.
Yeah.
You know, the lead generation, ISA. I mean, that's the hard thing about this business is that, you know, if I was going to open a doctor's office, I have a pretty clear blueprint, right? Like I probably need a nurse. I probably need an insurance billing person. I probably need somebody to help schedule. Like there's kind of a clear path.
Yeah.
And in real estate, in for better or worse, it is kind of the Wild West. So you could do any of these things.
Yeah.
You know, but I think too many times people lump in operations as just like all the stuff they don't want to do.
Right.
You know, so it's like, that's operations.
So what falls under operations for you then, right? Obviously,
you know,
admin, you said marketing.
Yeah. In a perfect world, I think all of the things except the active buying and selling of real estate, the licensee. I mean, to me, it is literally everything except the actively buying and selling. It's lead generation on some level, maybe not actively participating, but deciding where you're going to spend that money.
When you say lead gen, meaning the systems or the platforms or the marketing.
Are we going to buy Zillow? Are we paying for Realtor? Are we getting an ROI on it? Should we get this website? Should we get, you know, Ylopo? Does it integrate with something that to manage all these leads? Like, how does all that happen?
Got it.
To me, that's the ideal scenario. And we'll get into in a minute that I know not everybody can hire a, you know, super talented, experienced operations person right out of the gate.
Yeah.
But best case, in my case, I was really lucky to fall into a situation where I could build it. And even better, I had 2 people who really didn't care. They literally like, we still want to go sell real estate. You figure out the CRM, you figure out the leads we need to be paying for, you train the agents, you know. But again, this is where it comes to me back to your self-assessment and like, what do you want? Do you want to have a 50-person team? Are you going to be a brokerage one day? Is it you and another agent? Like, what's the best version of this company? And then back into, you know, how you get there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So when to hire operational help, we said that basically when you're hire before you need it and when you start missing things that can't be gotten to, right? And I would say that I mean, I know that means, hey, I'm doing a shit ton of business over here, and this stack of paperwork hasn't been gotten to. These check boxes haven't been checked, right? These checks haven't been submitted so we can get paid our commission. That's a problem. That's an operational problem, right?
Right.
But then there's also times where you might end up with bottlenecks to selling more real estate because you don't have the operational pieces in place.
Right, for sure. Yeah, past client, you know, when you've been talking about doing a past client event for 3 years and have never done one.
Right.
Find a person. When I'm going to start an email newsletter for, 10 years and you don't do it, which we're all guilty of. I get it. I'm not picking on you. I do it too.
Well, I think we just started ours this week, actually.
Yeah, we paused ours for like 2 years or something. It just, we already had it and stopped. But
so I don't listen. It didn't get done until just this past week because I was definitely not going to get that done.
But you have a person.
And then I added a person, and the person said to the other person, "Hey, that whole newsletter idea, let's do that thing.
I love this stuff. Let me do it."
Right. And then a newsletter went out. I was like, holy, look at that. We got a newsletter. That's pretty cool. It's amazing when that happens.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. So let's see, when to hire operations help. Yeah. And then I have, what are the key signs you need this person? So we talked about the key signs that you needed a person. What I want to find out, and we'll get to the operations manager, but before we even get there, where do we find these people? And how do I know when I found them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it does go back a little bit to that idea of like, you got to remember you're looking for a not you. Like, don't just get the person that's like, they're great, because you probably like them because they're a lot like you. So, Indeed's obviously a great source. ZipRecruiter, any of these websites where you can post a position are great. What I think is magical about those sites, a lot of them have built in what's basically considered an applicant tracking system or an ATS. So, we preach CRM all day long to people. I think where people really go wrong in identifying, there's two key ways to do this. As far as identifying new people you don't know, using an Indeed or something like that, but you've got to have some sort of basic system. One's built into Indeed. Zip's got their own, Wise Hire's got their own, where it helps you categorize, God forbid, this one's a hot prospect. This one's I'm not interested in. This one. But I think the other problem that people do make is that they only look at 2 or 3 people. We used to hire as an offering. We don't offer that any longer, just for reasons I won't even go into. It is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
We would literally, my goal would typically be to get between 100 and 200 resumes for any position we were hiring. Okay. Because you have to look at a good chunk of people and figure out what you want. And I think part of the reason people are afraid to do it is that they have to do all that. So at least get a platform that's going to help you manage. Hey, this guy's great. This guy's not interested. We love her. We should interview her. Just some strategic platform for managing.
Yeah. That. So we're looking for an administrative assistant right now. We got like over 600 resumes, had to pause the thing because how the hell are you going to go through 600 people? Well,
in a perfect world, you automate it. So we used an ATS that automatically sends out questions for them to answer, which eliminates half the people right off the bat. They won't even respond.
Oh, really?
And then you've got answers, and not even half, probably more than half, won't even engage with that automated email. And then the ones that do answer, now you've got kind of an additional data point. You've got a resume. You've got, the questions would be like, what are some goals you've set for yourself? Have you ever worked, depends on the job, right? But have you ever worked in a management capacity before? Or do you live within an hour of our office? Like whatever the criteria is, just something simple and automated to help you weed people out fast,
Okay.
And the second source that I want to make sure that we tackle and still need a system for is your sphere. Like as much as I'm saying, don't just hire your buddy, people that you've done business with, especially in real estate, that understand kind of your MO and how you operate and your ethics and just who you are a tremendous source of, hey, my kid just graduated with a marketing degree and can't find a job, but they're super smart. Or, my husband just lost his job, or I've been a stay-at-home mom for 5 years. Now the kids are at college or whatever, or back in school, and I want to find some work. I think the problem with that too is people are scared, again, of telling all those people no. You're going to tell 99.9% of those people no, but have that system. You're not telling them no. You have a system where they apply. They're not texting you like, hey, I want the job. You got to have a little bit of a plan.
Yeah. So lead me through this. Well, before we dive more into the plan, like, how do I determine, am I just using a Strengthsfinder? Am I just using a DISC assessment?
So, yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because I'm a big fan of this process. And I think, to me, what I personally, and I still do this periodically, especially as I start to kind of reach my own capacity again, like, what do we need now? I just sit down with a piece of paper and write down all the things I do, or all the things I know I should be doing. And I start to categorize them into marketing or operations or sales or whatever pieces. And what you'll find patterns. You'll be like, oh, look, I do all the operation stuff. As soon as it happens, the sales stuff, I never seem to get around to. That's the answer to your question. You need a salesperson. Oh, you never get to the marketing stuff? You need a marketing person. But it's really powerful. And I still do it on pen and paper. Like, I literally sit down with pen and paper and just write down, like.
All right. So I have a bunch of operational stuff written down, right? I have a bunch of ones and zeros. How do I go and find the ones and zeros person?
Yeah, I think number one,
how do I know I found a ones and zeros person?
Yeah, wow, that's an especially good question. I mean, I think number one, when you're writing up what you're looking for, even if it's just bullets, you don't have to write like a magical 5-paragraph essay, but like, when the bullets are maintain, learn and maintain CRM, learn and maintain website platforms, update spreadsheet of whatever. For one, you're going to attract that person. Like, you're not trying to sell them to get the job. You're almost trying to discourage them in some sense of like, look, this is hard. I need somebody to do all this stuff. I need a details person. I need somebody who's going to remember to pay the office bill every month. Like, I need these things done. And I think in some sense, you're going to attract the right people through that. But I understand your question is a little more like, when you get face to face, like, who is this? Who is this human?
Yeah, because, man, in my experience, a lot of times, and I know a lot of people have experienced this, you run ads, everybody applies for the job, you weed out some who are obviously crappy or not a good fit or weird, or you don't want to work with them or whatever it is. But then you're left with this group of people who present well, say they want the job, and say they will do the job, and say they can do the job, right? Yeah. And you're like, man, all right, I'm just going to roll the dice here and I'm going to pick you. How about you? And then they get into the job, and then you find out, like, they're really not that great at consistency, or they're really not that analytical, or they're bored doing data entry when you clearly said this is a data entry job, right?
Right.
So how do you work that out?
I mean, I think, the it's super cliche, but the hire slow, fire fast. I mean, really, like, if you're a solo agent, maybe have them talk to your broker, have them talk to an associate or a friend. Like, I think the more, I mean, I've been criticized for our hiring process almost being too long, because, like, really, I'm like, okay, great. I'm hiring you to be a marketing person. Like, write me a description of this house. Like, there are lots of little tests you can do before hiring someone.
Let's get into the testing. That's good. So you're going to test them as well. So we're going to do personality assessment, and you said Strengthsfinder and the DISC profile.
Or a DISC. A DISC is solid for that. I think Strengthsfinder is good for the personal. So like, what am I good at?
What do you use for DISC? Because the Tony Robbins free website no longer actually gives you your DISC report.
I am about to check out whatever that was that somebody posted in the Follow Boss group. That's the new decent free one. So I've always used Tony Robbins before. So
we're going to have to check that out then. So if you're not a Follow Up Boss member, you need to be a Follow Up Boss member to get into the group, and you get an awesome kick-ass CRM in addition to it. So
Yeah, for sure. And we can drop a link to that in the Facebook when it is dropped there or whatnot. I'll find which one it is. I'm just not sure. Or you can Google, free disc profile.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. So I want to find that out, but if they just post it in the Facebook group, we'll be able to grab that. So
yeah,
do
but
personality profiles.
Yeah.
Do you have tests? Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you have tests that you do?
I mean, honestly, they're in my brain. I mean, it's, if you're going to be an operations person, like, okay, let me give you a login to this CRM or build me a spreadsheet or something. I mean, it doesn't have to be a lengthy. I have somebody recently that actually paid the person. They're like, I'll pay you hourly to do a little bit of work with us to see kind of how it goes, which I was happy to make people do it for free. But I think if you're going to do it for, a week or two, but yeah, just, come up with a test relevant to the job. 100% ask another human being, whether it's a spouse or a broker or a friend from out of industry. But multiple interviews, get deep. You can get deep. What are your goals? Like, what was, in a past job did you have? By the way, I have a hiring guide that we're going to share with everybody for free. It's not even gated by email, that has like questions to ask, some sample job descriptions, sample onboarding. So we'll share all that. There's probably better questions on there than I can think of right now. But again, just take them through a bit of a process that takes a minute, hey, I want you to do this. And when you complete that, you've probably seen this with the Tony Robbins disc. Half the people couldn't figure out that they had to attach it and send it back to me, even though my email says, please take this assessment and email it back to me. There'd be people that would follow up with me 3 weeks later that was like, hey, you never got back to me. I took the disc. And I'm like, I know, but I don't work for Tony Robbins. Like, when you submit it, it doesn't magically come to me. So like, you're not my operations person. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would call that natural selection, right?
Exactly.
They have naturally selected themselves out, right? They didn't get eaten by a tiger, but it's the same concept.
Right. Thank you for the data point. You are now on the no need to follow up with list.
You've demonstrated a lack of attention to detail and consistency.
Right.
Thank you.
And the grammar and the response, the speed of the response. I think people sometimes, we all know those context clues are there. I don't know that we always think about it, but when somebody, says thank you every time and signs their email with their name and like finishes the loop, like that's who you're looking for.
Yeah, good. Okay, let's go back to that process. So you said posting on Indeed, Wise Hire, right? Getting a ton of resumes. Is there anything that you do to alleviate some of the burden of literally like scrubbing through these people? I know you mentioned an automated email to get them to answer some questions, right? Then what? Then we do what? Then we do what?
Yeah, so I would say our typical process when we did this as like a third party would be, to get the post out there, get the applications come in, auto email going out with just 5 like somewhat relevant to the job, but like tell us a little bit about you. Do you have any goals? Have you read any interesting books? And even if people respond like, I don't like to read, I listen to podcasts. I'm like, okay, great. That's cool. That's an answer, not I didn't respond. Typically what we did, only because we had another person internally doing the screening, is that they would then screen down to like who I needed to look at. So I know not everybody has that luxury, but again, having some sort of system where you can go through and say, okay, look, I got 11 people. I want to get to 5. So who are the top 5? Like, you may have to spend a minute doing it, but who are oh, look, this person has operations experience. Oh, look, this person doesn't, but they're a great communicator. They also have marketing. This is a bad way to say this, but what I try to do is generally find what I kind of feel like is the strongest person, and then feel everyone else compares to them in some way, right? Like if you've got a benchmark.
So it's sort of like buying houses, right? You tell a buyer, hey, have a top 3 as we go out and look at these houses, which, you have the one that you would purchase, and then you have option 2 and like your second and your third, and just move them around, right? But you've always got that top 1.
That's a perfect example, because even when I was in production, I'd tell people, I'm like, yeah, you can always go a little bit further out and pay a little bit more money, or you could build and get, the exact height and style and color of cabinets that you want, but that's a different thing than this. But that's a perfect example. Like it's you're always comparing one to the next option.
Okay. And so what I'm hearing is part of it, you really just have to wade through the mountain of resumes and look at them and,
Right. But in our process, which again is not really that brilliant, it was a piece of software that we bought. I mean, that sends out the email automatically as part of it. I wouldn't recommend it to you guys because it's more of a like HR platform.
Mhm.
You can just do it inside of Indeed or WiseHire or whatnot. But 200-ish resumes in, down to about 60 as far as who answered the questions. Get those down to about 10 that have some semi-relevant experience. And then I would usually aim to have quick 15-minute like phone calls with 5 of those.
Okay, got it. So we're in the phone call. What are we doing in the 15-minute call?
Just a for one, are they on time? Can they work? Do they answer? Do they answer hey, or like how do they answer the phone? What's happening here? And then usually I would put them a little bit on the spot and just say like, hey, I've got your resume here. That's all great. Why don't you just tell me a little bit about your experience in your own words? And then just let them talk.
Got it.
Like, can they say, like, who's got a good pitch? Who can say like, yeah, I went to school here and I did that, but after that I did this, but I didn't love it there, but I realized my true calling was marketing. And so now I've been doing marketing for the last 3 years. Why are you leaving that company? Oh, they're downsizing, or I decided we're moving to another whatever. Just like, it kills me because as real estate agents, we're on the phone all day with people, or we should be, asking them questions about their motivation,
getting into their personal lives.
Right.
You would think it would be a natural fit, right?
I would, but
for some reason it's not.
I get it. It's nerve-wracking. I understand it. I've done it like hundreds, if not thousands of times, and it's still hard.
Well, listen, I can say from even personal experience, like looking for an administrative assistant, I'm like, I wrote the job description. Can you do the job? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. Do you think you'll do the job well? Yeah. Did you do your last job well? Yeah. Shit. Okay. All right. Well, I don't have any more questions. Let's try it out. Right? Like, what else do I do here? Right.
Here's the thing. I mean, no one's naturally magically good at this. So you have to do it. I mean, you have to do it. And I had a pretty serious success rate, but I had 1 or 2 that didn't pan out too. And I made it right. I found them the next person at no cost and made it happen. That's just what you do. Nobody's perfect at it. But I think by the same token, I've said this before, and I want to be careful the way I say it, but it's okay sometimes if people are stepping stone. Like, you may not hire your be all end all operations manager as your first hire ever. But if it's a good job for them, if it gets something to put on their resume and they do a good job for you and they outgrow you or vice versa, great. There's really no harm in that. I think people worry a little bit too much that like, oh, I don't think this person's I don't think this person can run my 50-person operation 10 years from now. It's like, okay, great. It's better than you
grow around that.
Not doing a client event again this year,
Right. Well, let's talk about that. So we just segued from basically an administrative assistant to an operations manager. So why don't you define the difference for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, look, these titles are a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, just because like sometimes they're really interchanged and not even used properly. I think in my mind, a true operations manager is somebody who's legit empowered to make financial decisions, to like really run the business as a whole. Now, that said, they don't get that necessarily on day one. So I think a good answer to your question would be the idea that, and think about like the MRAA book. And if you're not familiar with that, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, the original, like Gary Keller,
the Red Book,
right? How to run a team. I mean, that model still stands up in some sense. They're your assistant, and then they're like a marketing admin. I know I'll get it wrong, but like, they move their way up from, I'm going to do some I'm going to put your listing in for you.
Right.
And then they, get a little more, some more responsibilities, but ultimately they grow into, the operations manager, kind of obviously paraphrasing a bit there. But to your point, Dale, I think an admin assistant is somebody who is still a little more like, I need you to give me guidance. I need you to tell me what to do. Whereas an operations manager in theory is possibly telling you what to do. So
yeah. And I think that we can blend, or just for explanation, let me ask you this then. Would it be correct to say I've got sort of an administrative assistant, and then maybe even like an executive assistant, an operations manager, and then like a what's it, a chief operating officer or something like that, right? Like that's kind of the progression in terms of scale of the company and the scale of the job duties and things like that.
Right. So, yes, I would agree with that. And in theory, that could be the one person graduating into the next role.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. And so, I guess when you're an operations manager, would the operations manager would be managing the marketing department?
Yeah.
I'm assuming when we say lead generation, I don't mean making calls and generating business. Right. I mean, what are we buying? What lead sources are we using? Who we signed up with, and then the metrics around those things.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And then operations manager probably would be handling transactions, or not handling transactions, but managing the TC process, or the transaction coordination process.
Correct.
Okay. And then possibly, I guess, even, this is something I've experienced seeing you do this with clients, is managing the CRM from a health and functionality standpoint.
Right. For sure. Yeah. I think, and I think the other biggest key and why getting this hire right is so important. In theory, they're probably going to hire all these other people as you grow, and or agents. I mean, when I was in this role, I was responsible for recruiting and signing up all the agents that joined as well. They still obviously had to get approved by the team owners, but my goal was to, same thing, get them to the point of, give me a quick yes or no. Like, all I need is 15 minutes with you to say they're a yes or no, because I have vetted them to the point of where I think they're good enough to meet you. And so if you like them, great, they're in. If you don't, you don't, but they don't even have to know about them until I think they're enough of a fit to bring on. So I would agree with all the silos you just said, plus the growth, the people growth.
I've always wondered how like an HR manager or recruiting manager does that, right? Because, I can't say that I'm skilled at like recruiting for like an engineering role, or recruiting for a manufacturing role, or recruiting for a, healthcare role. Like, what the hell do I know about that, right? I'm like, well, I guess I'll look at your resume and see if you're, if you put on clean clothes today, but how would I how would they do that, to filter those kind of people out, to decide who may or may not be good?
Yeah. I mean, it really is. It is a full-time job. I mean, it's not super relevant in the real estate space, I think, but there's a term now called people ops. It's basically it's all of the above. It's kind of HR plus like all of the things involved, and obviously in the corporate world with all the work from home stuff and remote login and all that stuff, it's a whole other deal. But I mean, I think to answer that question somewhat, is it really is a full-time thing to dig into people's motivation and are they the right fit? And again, sometimes you have to learn by doing it.
Yeah.
And that's where I come back to the stepping stone thing, like if it's not your be all end all, fine, as long as one party's not overly taking advantage of the other, it's fine if this is just your, person to get you to the next level and you're a good thing on their resume and going to give them a good reference. But I mean, I didn't put this in the reading recs, which I'll share when we're done, but Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, which is actually in our hiring guide, is another good one. It's a book that the concept is basically like, trust your gut. Like you're going to know, you're going to have these feelings. The problem is when your gut is based on like one meeting and you're like, hey, that guy's cool, he'd be my operations manager. Like that's not a good hiring practice.
Right. Yeah, no, that doesn't sound good at all. All right. So did we cover who the ideal operations manager is?
I think somewhat. I mean, again, because I think it really ties into all the factors of what you're trying to do and who you are. But I think we covered it at a high level.
Okay, got it. How do I empower my operations manager? I think that's a great
Yeah, that's a good one. And that was designed a little more for the the person who has been the solopreneur forever and ever and ever, and now they have this person and they're either not ready to let go of certain things or whatnot. I think, something I did personally, I hope this is helpful for people, something I did personally. And when we hire this role, I would always joke, I'm like, congratulations, your first job is to onboard yourself. Like,
Oh no.
let me know how it goes. Because they're signing up for, this company of one or two people who are just running hard and they're doing great business and they're great people, but they don't have any systems. There's no plan. Like I always joke, and it's not really a joke. It took me 6 months to get all the passwords when I set up in this role. Like I literally had to just, oh, you guys are paying for that? I had no idea. Can I get the login so we can make it come to the CRM?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times people just don't empower. One of the rules I set for myself was I basically said, hey, if the cost of this is more than $1,500, I'm not even going to ask. Like, I'm just going to do it. Like I have a chance to buy some. And to be fair, I had two owners when I was in this role. And so I'm not going to ask one. They're like, well, I like it. What does the other one think? Call her. She's like, well, she has a question. And then it takes me 3 days to make a decision.
Yeah.
I just empowered myself in this case to say, hey, you know what? If it's this much money or this much of a thing, or it's not going to move the needle that much, I'm just going to do it. And then I'll report to them. But I think as a leader, you've got to give this person enough of a leash to do what they're going to do, because, hopefully at this point you've hired somebody that is a not you, and for you to try to tell them how to do the things that you never did or that you never get around to seems a little bit crazy. Now, some advice for the operation, for the hiree or for the operations person, you've got to give good feedback or a weekly report or a daily report on what you're doing. I know from personal experience, it feels super micromanaging. Most of us who are good at this don't like to slow down doing it to say, hey, look at me, this is what I did. Mm-hmm. But it's incredibly important that you share some. And I did this even late in working with this team, and still they would be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you do this much stuff. And I'm like, that's the short list of the stuff I wrote down. Like, right. I'm over here running the company. But, I think it's just really important for the operations or assistant, people that are watching this, just to also remember it's super important. And you're going to get a lot more leeway if you can build that trust around like, oh yeah, I built that landing page. And, it's not always the things you see. It's not like, oh, I put that listing in. It's like, oh, the realtor.com leads were broken and not coming to Follow Boss. I figured it out and fixed that while I was building a landing page, while I was talking to a new agent who might join us, and then I had a phone call with this new website platform that might be a good thing for us. So like detailing that enough that they know what you're working on is really important.
Yeah. So what are some of the pitfalls then? Right. I think you just scratched the surface of it, saying report to the team leader or report to your direct manager or owner what you're doing, because otherwise what happens? Yeah.
I mean, the assumption is that you're not doing anything.
There it is.
It blows my mind that it goes from like, but again, we are trained so much in real estate to be so top of mind and so hustling. And so like, if I don't see it, this is a perfect example. And it actually cracks me up to no end. One of the successes of the team is that I took all the leads away from the owners because they didn't need them. They would go out and get business. So we took all the leads away, and guess what happened? We doubled the production of the team because the owners went out and got more business, and now agents were actually getting leads. But I'll never forget, one of them came to me and was like, hey, why are we still paying for realtor.com? We're not. And I'm like, okay, we paid $800 for realtor.com. Now this was like 10 years ago, to be fair. But I was like, we paid $600 for realtor.com and we made 15 grand last month. And they're like, oh, I'm like, that's why we're still paying for realtor.com. They're like, oh, it's like, right. But
exactly.
It's not their job to check the ROI on stuff. They're out selling houses, but yes, the assumption is that you're doing nothing. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that happens a lot. And so to play off of that also, to keep going down that road, how do I know when I made a bad hire?
Yeah, I mean, I think we very, very often know. It's very hard to admit it for a number of reasons. Number one, you feel like, you did something bad. You certainly don't want to disappoint anyone or hurt anyone's feelings. Plus, it's very possible you've waved to the world, like, I got this operations person. We're going to crush it. It's going to be amazing. And then it's not working. I mean, you've got to meet with these people and have conversations with them. So, to me, it's a review. Sit down with them, say, hey, I'm not feeling, and write all this down. Don't go into a meeting and just hope you remember the things. Show up in a meeting with a written, like, here's the things I'm still doing, or here's the things I'm worried that aren't getting done, or, here's what's happening. But I think, I wouldn't quite call it a written warning, but I think you have some sort of meeting that's like, hey, I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm not feeling. And then set, hey, let's circle back in 2 weeks and see how this is going. It's 1,000 times easier to fire someone if you give them okay, these are my concerns. Let's break for a minute and meet again in 2 weeks. If those concerns haven't been addressed, it's a much easier conversation than just be like, well, I'm firing you because I don't know why, but it doesn't seem to be working. Like,
yeah, you can't, it's hard to do that, right?
Sure.
Okay, so you gather up your evidence, or you gather up, you document what it is that's not working, share it with the person. So how often are you doing that? How often are you reviewing these things with these?
I mean, if things are good, I do 30, 60, 90, and then at least annual, if not quarterly. I mean, I basically still had to do my own when I was in that type of role, but I would just call for a meeting, to check on things or renew my agreement with them or whatnot. But I did agent reviews quarterly anyway. So we just kind of set the tone that we have quarterly check-ins, which is important. And they're not complicated, but we look at their sales numbers. We ask them what's good and what's bad, and, quarterly check-in.
Yeah.
But if things are going bad, call a meeting, I mean, not like, oh, maybe they'll get better in a month, like have that meeting quickly.
Right. So now let's say you've had a couple of meetings, the person is still, let's say that they are performing at 50% of your expectation.
Yeah.
Right? Consistently, just 50%, whichever 50% it is, it's about 50% of what you thought it was going to be, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is the tough part, right? So they're there, they're doing some things, they're handling some things, right? What do? Do you just like let them go and let the plates that they did have in the air, no matter how poorly, fall on the ground and pick up the pieces, or let the chains break, or what do you do?
That's a good one. I mean, I on some level, it comes down to personality. Like if they're the right, if they're the right person, or if you really like them and it's a training thing, that's one thing. If they're never going to cross that line ever, I mean, something I say probably again to a fault is like, if it's your company, it's your fault. Like either you hired them or you didn't train them or you didn't get them the things that they need. But again, coming back to that consistent conversation or review or whatever, what other tools do you need? What, like, like companies like KW, and I'm sure others have, like Recruit Select and all these trainings that people can go to learn these things. So, I almost might harken back to in the job description, what we're talking about, somebody who is a self-starter, somebody who is going to Google stuff instead of asking you how to do it. That's an important aspect there. But I think, the 50-50 really comes down to, is it a true training issue, or is this person not capable? And if they're not capable, then you need to look at letting them go. Maybe you can find another role. If you can afford to do it, maybe have another role come in and they can kind of guide them, and then they can take over that role, just so you're not without somebody. but yeah, it comes down to like, are they savable through training, or should you cut your losses? But anytime you think you should cut your losses, you should do it, and you should do it as quickly as reasonable.
Okay, and we're not going to presume to give people firing advice here, right? Because there's laws and et cetera, for your local place or area. And so you probably need to talk to an attorney about that kind of stuff if you have an employee that you're letting go, or just be aware of whatever your local laws are. So we definitely can't get into that. But last one on here, and then we'll go to how people can get in touch with you and the specialties that you provide for your clientele. Cool. But first, how to make a 5-year or 10-year org chart. That's amazing.
So I think this ties back to what we talked about initially, like kind of like what's the best version of you, right? Like, do I always want to be in production? Do I just want to be like the trainer person? Do I want to go live in Florida and run a team in New Jersey? Like, so really understanding that. So I think logistically how to do it, there's 2 tools I recommend. One's called draw.io, and it literally sits on top of like Google Drive, and you can just draw a flow chart. And then some of you may have also heard of Lucid Chart, which is lucidchart.com. We'll drop links to these, but you can literally just draw out a physical flow chart. So that's the logistical how. Both of these are tools where you can constantly edit things. But to me, I think it's really incredibly powerful to draw out a 5-year, what is my company going to look like 5 years from now? Okay, I'm going to be the sales manager, or I'm going to be the CEO, and I'm going to have a sales manager under me, and they're going to have a listing team and a buyer team. And, my operations person is going to be over marketing and CRM and this other silo. But drawing it out where you can visualize it is really incredibly powerful. There's a great book, which again I'll drop in the links, and it's in our doc we'll share, called The E-Myth. And basically they do this in that where they draw out, even if you're a solo person, they draw out that org chart, and their recommendation is to write a job description for each one. And their recommendation is for you to literally sign each role, because you have every role at that point. Like you have to do all of those things. But ultimately, again, it gives you clarity on who you're bringing in, because you're like, okay, now that I've done this job, I know this sounds terrible to most people, especially agents. Now that I've done this job, I can delegate it. And so that's the principle behind it.
Yeah, excellent. Good. All right. So Lee, what do you do for your clients? What's the specialty that you bring? How do you work with your clients? How do you help them in the operational field?
Yeah, so our primary focus, you mentioned we're a partner with Follow Boss like you guys. Our primary focus is the Follow Boss CRM as the brain of things. We do work with people on operations coaching, isn't exactly the right word. It's probably more of a management type thing, but most people get to us through us doing Follow Boss work. And they're like, oh, wow, you can help us with other stuff. And we're like, yes, we can. But Follow Boss is our real focus. And what we do on Follow Boss is we offer a free assessment so people can just submit their info to us. We give them a score. We even share their score relative to other people's scores, which I know people like to see. And then we can have a conversation if they're interested in customizing, their stages and action plans and things like that to really run their business. This is not a stock, here are our stages. This is, oh, you run this type of business. Let's set it up so that, your leads team operates cleanly, but you have other agents at your brokerage. How does that all work? What does it look like? Okay. So it's more of a customization that we, go through with you as we start to understand your business. So
great. Excellent. So that's awesome that you guys do an assessment on people's CRM for them. Lee, where can people find you?
Yeah, so our website, it's a little hard to spell. It's a long word. It's amplifiedsolutions.com. Quick bullet point, if you go to leeadkins.com, it'll get you there too. My last name is A-D as in dog, K-I-N-S, but leeadkins.com it'll also get you there.
Excellent. That sounds great, man. And of course, they can find you, if they are Follow Up Boss members, they can find you inside the Follow Up Boss Facebook group where you're constantly contributing, giving value, all that kind of stuff. And it's much appreciated. So we'll include those links here for everybody. And Lee, thanks for joining us today, man. And you know, I think people got a lot of really good takeaways from this to help them scale the stuff that I don't usually look at scaling.
Cool. Thanks, Dale. I always appreciate hanging out with you.
Yeah, man. Good talking to you. Have a great day.
All right, man. See you soon. You too.